And thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I'll help you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead a mediocre one. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, Tech Executive Coach and Advisor, and our subject today is all talk, no action. This is something that I think has been plaguing the tech industry for decades, but we're seeing it just attack people so vividly nowadays, because we often get stuck in some sort of an echo chamber, judging the world from the prism of someone that mainly gets contact with the outside world through LinkedIn and socials. You might be under an impression that maybe, it seems like everyone around you is doing things that you can only dream of. Somehow, everyone's got their own open claw instance that seems to have swapped out half of their employees. They have such an amazing AI progress, and 95% of their code is done with AI, and their engineers are essentially now orchestrating 12 different clouds, and everything seems so incredible. And you look at what your team is doing, and you're left agog, thinking, "Hey, why is everyone so cool, and we're just stuck in here?" And this is not new, okay? We've seen this repeatedly. I remember, seeing it all over the place. Like those people who initially were bragging about how with React Native, they were now like getting apps out within a couple of days. And no one seems to think that right now that's like an insane ability anymore, right? Those numbers don't add up. We know that. Or if we go back to cloud changes and any sort of technology that has transformed how we were operating. I remember probably about 20 years ago, where people were talking about extreme programming and how that was amazing, but nothing's a silver bullet, right? Nothing just changes things like that, and nothing works as easily as that. And I usually use this phrase only in one-on-one conversations with people, but I'm going to share it here. And my sort of analogy for what I'm seeing right now is that people talking about AI is a bit like teenagers talking about sex. Everyone's talking a lot, but there's not much real action going on. And I do think that if you, like many of the tech executives I work with, don't have a good support system, you don't have a lot of connection with other peers in different companies, then you're getting most of your information from socials, you are being misled. And if you don't understand that what you're seeing there does not necessarily mirror what's actually happening in those companies when it comes to the real work, then you might be getting the wrong impression about yourself. It's crucial that you understand and be able to make that distinction. And my point in this episode is to drive you towards two things. One is that if you're in this position, it probably means that you will benefit a lot from finding other support systems, finding your way to have better communication with people at the right level. Because on socials, on LinkedIn, you hardly get the truth. Even when people are like all vulnerable and opening up about stuff, most of the time they really are not. So if you're feeling like that, it is a good sign for you to get some extra support. You can do it with a coach, yes. I'm going to be shamelessly plugging myself. Whenever I talk to people, I'm like, that's not really how things work, etc. But even if you don't get a coach, there are a few things that you can do. Go to meetups, find some friends, and I know that find some friends sounds weird, but I'm like, okay, find some colleagues, find some peers outside in the industry that you can strike regular conversations with. Just have a beer, have a coffee with them, and talk about what's going on. Get a mastermind group, which is also a possibility. And lastly, I think people underestimate how easy it is nowadays to just join one of the many, many good Slack communities that there are online for tech leaders. My personal favorite is the RAND's Leadership Slack, where you have, tens of thousands of tech leaders all over the globe who just share their thoughts. And you don't even have to write anything. Just join one of the channels and see what people are saying really about their tech adoption, about what's really going on. And you see this in everything about what they're doing in hiring, interviewing people, compensation, coaching people, talking with their CEOs. I see a lot of the things that actually come up in my regular practice. So I enjoy it as well because it helps me see what people who don't get coaches, how they tend to tackle things. That actually teaches me a lot. And I think that for you all watching or listening, this is an amazing way to see what actually is happening in the world around you and be able to ask questions and not get like the shallow answers that you'd get on LinkedIn. So that's one thing I want you to take away. Number 2 for this episode is to think about how can you ensure that your team is not staying behind, because that's the fear that we always have. And for that, I think that starting to allowing yourself to publicly, build in the open is something that is also undervalued, and many people will benefit from that. If you start sharing what you're doing, the experiments, the results you're seeing, this actually helps tremendously in building a better brand and in you having the ability to convey what's happening, formulate your ideas, have more accountability to how you're doing things, especially, again, if you don't have a coach. The accountability of doing things in the open actually can really help. So those things, I think, will help you understand exactly where you are, because that's important. If you don't know where you are, it's pretty tough to know where you ought to be headed, and to get some momentum, get some progress going on, again, even without a coach nudging you and giving you some kicks in the rear if necessary. And these things are how we sort of get bust out of an echo chamber, because again, it's a pandemic nowadays for tech people. We all get fed the same stuff and we're all in the same bubble. But if you can't, shoot the breeze with people for real and see what's actually happening, you'll just think that all that buzz is the real stuff, and it often isn't. All right, so start working on your support system and start thinking about how you can be operating more in the open. And if you feel like you cannot do it really in the open, at least do it internally, right? Have an internal blog at your company. That would work. Have a Substack that you send to people you've worked with in the past about your progress. And it's not open to the world, only, invite only, just spread through your friends, because that can really help you formulate your thoughts, understand what's happening, get some genuine feedback, because that one-on-one feedback, that's why I always love having questions in my newsletter, because the responses I get from people there are usually a lot more raw and real than whatever you see online. So I really recommend doing that, and you'll see and you'll gain a lot of benefit. Okay, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, my email's in the show notes and I'll be happy to help. And of course, also check out my newsletter, which I just mentioned, where you'll get every week this newsletter, an article, another video, and some extra goodies. The link for that is in the show notes as well. And I'll see you here next week. Ciao.